fáilte róga cháirde, chuir mí tosú leis an séisiún seo, Schools of the Future, the Digital Classroom, agus chuir fáilte mór rih príomhaide agus múnseoirí ó Coláiste Bhaile Chlár agus rih na daltaí atá anseo ling cumáid. And I will immediately, then having introduced our panel here, Alan Mungy, the principal, Lara Daba and Gareth Callan, members of staff from Coláiste Chlár, which is a new college. It has only come to its third year in existence. So for them to be here presenting to you today is quite an achievement, to have come so far in such a short time and established such a reputation for the digital classroom and innovation there. And in particular, when we think of the journey we've made with regard to computers in the classroom, computers and computer technology, we thought we had arrived when we actually got e-books, and computers in the classroom were really just a knee reader. And Alan and his team are actually going to show us how you can make the e-learning central and the digital experience central to the whole learning experience, and I think have a far deeper learning experience. I believe we must meet young people where they're at. They're all using their smartphones and they're plugged in, and they are learning constantly, and we must use that opportunity in order to direct their learning and to open them to the possibilities of the e-world. So I'll pass over to the principal, Alan Mungy.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Peter. So essentially what I'm going to do is just present the story of our school. To give a little bit of a format, I'm just going to give an introduction around why we chose to go the way we went, how we planned it out, how we started to develop our vision and what we wanted to achieve in Coláiste Bhaile Chlár, and then the two teachers, because really it's not me implementing it, it's the teachers and it's the students who are doing the hard work really on a day-to-day basis. So they're here to tell the story, and the reason we chose this kind of format, very often I go to conferences and presentations and it's just the story of the principals, and it's the principal's story, and kind of going back to Orla McCormick's presentation, very often schools can become, and the culture that develops in a school can be that of the principal. But this is really the story and the culture of our school and the culture of Coláiste Bhaile Chlár. So I suppose in a way I'm going to deal with the elephant in the room, and that's last week's OECD report initially, because I imagine that'll be the first few set of questions that'll come to me afterwards. But picking up on what Peter mentioned there, for anyone who actually read the OECD report, it is a cautionary tale. It suggests to us where it has shown to us where things have been negative, but it also has shown us where things have been implemented in a very positive way as well. So really the successful integration of technology in education is not about simply dropping e-books and e-readers into the classroom. That report would have highlighted that, and it wasn't a surprise to me. You would imagine today if the Minister for Education, if she rolled in this evening and said, okay, we've a one-to-one initiative and we're going to give devices to every student in the country, I can tell you it would be a disaster and the results would not be good 2 or 3 years down the line, because that's not how it should happen. And certainly the OECD report highlights that you have to be careful how you introduce technology in your classroom. If you don't plan it out, if you aren't strategic about it, if you don't have a clear vision, it is not going to be successful. The OECD report would have highlighted context-specific instances of where it was successful in certain instances in Denmark, in Australia, but one-to-one provision. And I suppose picking up on Orla's point, if you have externally mandated reform, and if you read the reference to Goodson in 2001, Hargreaves would have highlighted again in 2006, externally mandated reform tends to be less successful in schools, teachers don't like being told what to do, nor do principals like being told what to do. The best reform comes from the ground up. And essentially that's what we've tried to achieve in our school, where as a school and a group of teachers, we've looked at what we want to achieve in terms of teaching and learning. And it's only then that you're going to have a positive impact on it. And it's not the device, it's not the amount of time you spend on it, it's not the software you use, it's not the digital textbooks that you use. The key elements for success are the teachers. At the end of the day, schools are in the business of teaching and learning. And the most important person in a school is the teacher, and it's the teacher that has the greatest impact on the quality of teaching and learning that happens. But more importantly, if you are going to introduce digital technologies, the teacher has to be able to make that connection between teaching and learning, between the device and between the assessment. And it's only then will you see success in terms of a successful implementation. This is the quote from the very last paragraph of that OECD report. So if you do read all 200 odd pages of it, you eventually get to where the positives are, and it offers us the advice and the guidance. So it's not a report that you would kind of ignore. It's a report that you need to read because it is a cautionary tale and it points us to the right direction in terms of implementing it. So essentially, if you are going to implement technology into your schools, and I suppose I gave this similar presentation to principals last week in the J&B sector, under their management body. And I suppose in a way I probably should be speaking to principals again. I don't have that forum, but you have a responsibility here in terms of you are on ETB boards around the country. And I think you need to have the knowledge and your capacity needs to be improved in the area around digital technologies in the digital classroom, so you're better informed as board members, so that when these things are discussed at your board meetings, that you have a sound grounding and a sound background in ensuring that the quality of education that's going to be provided in the schools that you are responsible for is successfully implemented if technologies are going to be implemented in schools. So there's a number of key areas that schools that are considering it need to look at. And initially it is around vision and leadership in schools first. And then you start to look at teaching and learning and how it's going to be used in the classroom. And it's not until the very end that you start to look at devices. You go outside here, and I'm sure there are some retailers outside who will sell you a device and say, you know, you should introduce these into your schools over the next year or two. If you're a principal and you're uncertain and you're just introducing a device next September because you know the principal down the road has suggested it, or the retailer has sold it to you, or on the advice of the CEO or whoever has suggested that you implement a particular device, it's not going to work. You need to take time, principals need to take time, the ETBs need to take time to develop their own vision for where they see digital technologies being used in the classroom. And the leadership in schools needs to take that time. So there's a number of key areas they need to look at. And then you start to look at teaching and learning and how it will be implemented. And then you start to look at the infrastructure and the type of devices that you would potentially use. So in terms of ourselves, I was in a unique position, and principals often say to me, Alan, you know, you are unique. You have a newly established school. You're only open 3 years. You have highly motivated teachers. I face the same challenges as any other principal faces. Yes, I am able to implement change, probably at a more rapid pace, but the challenges are still there for me as a principal. And in a way, I believe it's an excuse for people to say, you know, Alan, you're a unique situation. Yes, I am slightly unique, but the challenges that I faced may just take longer for others to implement. So I was in a unique position that I had 7 months before I was appointed to the school to sit back and to speak to people, to talk to people, to look at previous implementation strategies in other schools around the country. And it allowed me that time to reflect and think about how we might approach teaching and learning in our school. So that started to develop, and as we started to develop the recruitment process as well, and speaking to to teachers, we developed a vision for where we saw teaching and learning 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, potentially where we might go. So what I'm saying is that every principal, every ETB in the country needs to develop their own vision for the introduction of ICT into teaching and learning that's specific to their context. The vision in my school may be slightly different than the vision in Inishman or in Inisheer or in Athenry or in Loughrea. But there will be an overarching vision from the ETB that will come down and inform the individual context-specific vision for particular schools. And when you start to develop that, then you start to look at developing a strategic plan. If you don't have a strategic plan developed, it will not be a successful implementation. And that strategic plan needs to look at everything from organisational capacity to implement change. I would say in my instance there is greater organisational capacity given that we are a new school. Other schools need to develop that organisational capacity and need to look at what staffing they have, what resources they have, need to look at where they see themselves progressing as a school, and they need to start to develop that strategic plan. So we have developed a strategic plan in our school that's planned out for the next 3, 4, 5 years in terms of how we are going to continue to implement and continue to develop the introduction of ICT into teaching and learning in our school. But you also need to quality assure what you're going to do. You need to be confident that you have the structures put in place and you have the measures of success over that period of time of implementation year on year. So what we've done, we've built in the school self-evaluation process. We have continual monitoring and evaluation of what we're doing in the school. So that needs to be all organised and set in place before you even consider devices and look at teaching and learning. Secondly, you need to lead the shift. So as a principal, if a principal isn't or doesn't believe in this, it's not going to be successful in schools. The OECD report would have pointed to some of that. The OECD report, while it was only analysing numeracy and literacy and computer use, the report itself didn't specifically look into the causes of underperformance. It referred to other research that was carried out in the country, specific research. But when you go and look at that specific research, it talks about principals developing a vision and leading the change in their school, but also developing capacity and identifying leaders within the school who can drive it forward. Because if it's just the principal trying to lead it forward, again, it's not going to be successful. You need people like Lara and Garrett and other teachers in our school, Eleanor, Dervla. I have a whole variety of teachers who are taking responsibility for particular areas in relation to teaching and learning, and they're developing and building the capacity of teachers within the school. They're transforming the teaching and learning environment in our school. But that's critically important to identify how you're going to build leader and educator capacity. Then you start to think about teaching and learning and think about how you would envisage using digital technologies in the classroom. And it's not about digital technologies as in and of themselves. It's about the learning experience. And Lara's going to talk about that in a lot more detail. We decided and we looked at the approach to teaching and learning we wanted to adopt in our school. And it is about discovery learning, constructivist learning. It is about project-based learning. It is about engaging students in the teaching and learning process so that it's not drill and practice. It's about students enjoying what they're doing. And we've looked at the learning activities first. So we've attended sessions with Barry Bennett. We've attended Paul Guinness. Teachers have gone out for in-service. We're going to Graham Powell in a couple of weeks again. So we're constant and we're involved in the instruction leadership project that was run out of Cork ETB over the last number of years. So we're looking at teaching and learning in our schools and looking at how looking at what teaching and learning activities are most suitable for that particular topic that we're covering. And it just so happens in a lot of instances that ICT enhances that teaching and learning activity, and that's when we use it. We don't use ICT all the time, and I know the students will outline some of that. And we're looking at trying to personalise the learning experience for our student, because one textbook doesn't fit all. And that was part of the reason that we chose not to go with textbooks. We went with e-books in our first year, purely on the basis that when you're recruiting a new staff and you have 12 or 13 members of staff coming in day one, it's a big ask to ask them to produce their own teaching and learning resource day one and take it from there. I'm not that hard a taskmaster. So our current third years, so Niamh and Dara that are going to speak, have e-books on their devices, and they had those during the first year. But we found, as we were developing our content for the following year, for incoming first years that were going to come the next year, the teachers started to use their own content instead of the e-books that they had on their devices, because they were given the time and the space to develop that content that was suited to the classes that were sitting in front of them. So we were starting the process of personalising the content for the students that were sitting in each and every class. And we weren't relying on textbooks that were probably designed 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, may have been published 2 years ago. So the teachers were able to insert content in geography that was date and time specific, so they could pull on the volcano. If they were studying volcanoes, they could look at volcanoes that were in the news that day, and it was inserted into the teaching and learning resource that the teachers had created. So as the students have progressed right up until third year at the moment, they have e-books on their devices, but a lot of them don't use them. They're now using the teacher-generated content. So we've started to personalise the learning. Then you start to look at managing the implementation. You need to build learning communities. And in a way, this is a learning community here right now. We're sharing our experience with you. If you have questions for us, we'll engage with those afterwards, and we'll learn from those questions as well. But we've built lots of different learning communities to achieve what we're trying to do. So we've built learning communities within the school, in subject departments. I would say the subject departments in our school are probably some of the most high-functioning, collaborative subject departments that I've ever seen. I'm a former school inspector, so I've been in lots of subject departments right around the country. And they're not working effectively, or weren't working effectively. They tend to, decide what textbooks we're going to use this year, how we might spend the budget. When you look at the minutes of subject department meetings. Now that's changing in recent years because teachers are starting to now talk about teaching and learning. Our teachers are totally focused on teaching and learning. So the learning communities within the school, across subject departments in our school. So as our Spanish and German and French teachers have developed content for their resources, the Irish department have looked and said, oh, you're doing something on my family in French, German and Spanish. Well, look, we're doing Maclán as well. So we're going to take some of the lesson activities you've developed in French, German and Spanish and use those in Gaeilge. And likewise, it happens between Gaeilge and the modern languages as well. So we're establishing learning communities across subject departments within the school now as well. We've built strong learning communities with other schools around the country. We are not unique. People often say, well, look, we've developed our own resources. There are other schools around the country doing this. Setanta College, Ratoath College. Ratoath College in County Meath was one of the first schools that we went to. I used to work with the former principal in Ratoath College. So we built up links. The first teaching resource we got was a guy from a guy called David Walsh in Ratoath College, who developed a really good teaching and learning resource for the study of business studies. But the story behind it is David didn't do all the work himself. His TY students in Ratoath College largely developed a teaching and learning resource. And David then became the curator of that and started to use it with his first years. So we took that little piece of work that David had worked on and the particular technology that he was using at the time and looked at how we would start to roll that out in our context. It's very important to build partnerships. to build partnerships, like I say, across sectors, to build partnerships with local industry, to build partnerships. Galway is the biomedical device capital of Ireland, I think. So we've built strong and effective partnerships with Boston Scientific and Medtronic and Avaya, and our students go into those companies, you know, to see what the real world is like and to show off some of their skills and pick up some of the skills and bring them back to our school. You need to look at inclusion. You need to look at equitable access to technology, equitable access to the teaching and learning resources. Every student in our school has access to the exact same resources, the exact same technologies. The students who have specific educational needs or special educational needs, we are able to amend and adapt our teaching and learning resources to suit them. So if we need to insert audio clips over specific words, which Lara has done an awful lot in her subject. So if there's a technical term that a student is uncertain of, the student is able to click on that technical term and get it read back to them. So we're starting to build that into the teaching and learning resource that we've developed. And then you start to look at the learning environments in schools and the layout of buildings and classrooms. And essentially, it really shouldn't matter what room in the school you're in. You should still be able to teach, because the most important person and the most important tool in that instance is the teacher. We're experiencing that at the moment. We have an accommodation issue in our school. So some lessons happen in the assembly hall. Some lessons happen outside of the general classroom. And it doesn't matter, because it is anytime, anywhere learning. It can happen because we have the teacher. We have developed the tools to make learning engaging anywhere. And then you start to look at the technology. So, people often say, you introduce computers into the classroom and change happens. It doesn't. There's two pictures here, one from the 1920s, when my grandfather was at school, and the one on the right looks as though it's a high-tech classroom and a classroom of the future. Teaching and learning practices are no different from one to the other. Students are still in rows. Students are still reading the same content from a computer. They're not engaging in learning. So don't be fooled by just having the device in your classroom that teaching and learning is going to change. We need to push beyond the kind of past experiences when we introduce technologies into the classroom. We need to give teachers the 21st century pedagogical skills so they can use 21st century technology in an appropriate way. It's only then that it will have a positive effect. There's a number of areas that need to be looked at in terms of education system change. The digital strategy is coming. It's coming in the next month. I'm very happy to see that. School leadership and culture, that needs to develop in schools. And I think that's where the ETBs have a critical role to play. I believe every ETB, in conjunction to being a national digital strategy, every ETB should develop a strategy around teaching and learning, a strategy around introducing 21st century pedagogical approaches into the classroom and into the learning environment. And then it's up to us as schools to work on that digital, or to learn from that digital strategy at a national level, and then from our management body to look at innovative teaching practices. And that's what Garrett and Lara are going to talk about. I'll just kind of finish on this last slide. For me, we need to get this right. This is from the OECD report. We need to get this right in order to provide educators with learning environments that support 21st century pedagogies and provide children with 21st century skills they need to succeed in tomorrow's world. Again, they shouldn't be limited to the textbook. They should be provided with the most up-to-date textbook. Technology provides great platforms for collaboration and knowledge creation, where teachers can share and enrich teaching materials. Perhaps most importantly, technology can support new technologies that focus on learners as active participants in the learning process, not just simply used as an e-reader. I'm going to ask the guys to play a short video which demonstrates. We were hoping maybe to run a short classroom here, but I think this will demonstrate more effectively what we do in our school.
Hi, my name is Lara. So I'm going to be talking about creating the digital classroom, but I want to reiterate a little bit about what Alan said. Our vision, or when we sat down as a school to talk about what our policy was, it was not a policy to create a digital classroom. It was a policy to create a platform that facilitates that deep and authentic learning. And we started to look at, okay, how are we going to do this? And to touch a little bit on that OECD report, it called for a need to evolve our teaching methodologies and to look at the instructional planning phase and what that was going to involve. So it came down to looking at those complex questions. What was it that we wanted our students to learn? And the technology, it gave us that opportunity to move away from the option of that scripted curriculum that was defined by a textbook to a more structure where we could develop a pathway for discovery for the students. And again, that came down to that instructional planning, where not only could we now look at the content, what was it that we wanted the students to get to? So I want the students to learn A, B, or C. You could go backwards again and say, okay, what do I need to do to get them to that? So by joining up past information, by piecing it together, by integrating that skill acquisition as well, so we could look at how are we going to embed that 21st century skills to equip students to go out and participate in the world. So our role of the teacher, still essential as it ever was, it was now changing to be a more facilitator of learning to just simply the deliverer of content. And again, looking at it, we looked at a lot of teaching and learning models, and when you're sitting down to look at a policy that you would like to implement in a school or in a body of schools, I think there's certain questions that you need to go through, and we looked at different models and to find different models that were going to suit us. So, and I know Garrett's going to go into a little bit more detail, and indeed Dara talks a little bit about these as well. So when we looked at the flipped and blended classroom, we saw that we had an opportunity to expand the walls of the classroom now. Students could, we could provide resources for pre and post learning. There was feedback. They had a platform to create their own learning. Blended because we still had that ability and the importance of picking our own tools within the classroom. Sometimes they would be digital, sometimes not. So, we really wanted students to use that pause button and to be able to conquer learning at their own pace and to come at it from what suited them. The SAMR model was something that I use on a daily basis, and I think it's so important when integrating technology. It's a really nice reflection model that we can bring through ourselves, so a teacher can look at, when you're using technology, is it simply a substitution? So, if you're reading content off a screen, how is it different to reading it from a book? And taking it all the way to augmented, to modified, to redefined. And it's my belief and passion that if you are going to integrate technology in the classroom, then it should modify and it should redefine the learning. It shouldn't be just simply a substitute. So when we looked at this, we looked at the universal design for learning as well, and we said, the technology now, it gave us that opportunity to design a unique learning environment where students could present and express themselves depending on the unique individual. So that also meant that, we could develop these flexible learning paths. So we could set a task and say that our students needed to do A, B, and C. And as teachers, we could provide those resources, we could provide success criteria and scoring rubrics. And then the students got to choose how would they best present their knowledge. So whether that's making a video, writing an essay, presenting, debating, it brought in all of that. And if I skip down to the solo taxonomy, where we were looking at what level of understanding do we want our students to have? Do we want them to know? Do we want them to understand? Or do we want to bring them to the highest? Do we want them to be able to apply that knowledge, to redefine it, to think about it? And this gave us that opportunity. The technology allowed us to present that environment within our classroom. We had our project-based and our connected learning, and there's scarcely a job out there today where you're not working as part of a team. More and more we walk into industries and we see the open plan now. Students need to be able to work as part of a team and identify their strengths. And from very early on, when they come into us as first years, we have them in groups, we have them defining their roles, learning to express opinions, and empowering them to say, well, what happens when we all don't agree? How are we going to get to that final outcome? And again, if we have the success criteria, there's no reason why they can't. That connected learning, we're living in a world where globalization has opened up this world of opportunities to connect across the globe. We can be working as part of a team where our teammates are physically across the world from us. So our students are now, they have that ability from Skype in the classroom to emails that they can go and contact them. They can seek out the experts. They can communicate with them. That design thinking, it's encouraging us to create a little bit more of an active classroom there where the students are empowered, that they're involved in their own learning, that it's increasing motivation and curiosity. And bringing it back to the solo taxonomy, it's now helping us to assess our students informally as well. Because in this type of a classroom, our students are busy, they're engaged, they're working away. It allows us as teachers to pull together different groups. If that's different groups that I need to reteach, if it's different groups that I need to challenge, it is now giving us that opportunity that we can do that. So just to talk a little bit about what this looks like within the classroom, it's fostering curiosity within our students. So allowing our students to come in with questions, not just go out with questions. Connecting new information with knowledge that they already have and applying it. And that means drawing it across your subject and the curriculum, that they can not only know it, that they can reproduce it in an exam, but they can apply it. And we know that if they learn to apply it in their own way, they learn to build towards their strengths, then they can go down and present it on paper much easier. They're working collaboratively, so they're communicating, they're identifying their strengths, and they're problem solving. It's empowering the students because we're affording them the opportunity for exploration, and we're facilitating that that atmosphere for questions. So if I come back to what I've started with, we're no longer the deliverer of content. Students don't get to come in anymore and sit passively while we are the only source of that content. They must take responsibility for their own learning. They must now play an active part in it, and we are facilitating them to get there. And if we structure that and we create the scoring rubrics, then there's no reason why we can't do that. So just to take you to a bit of a snapshot from it, and I suppose I became aware of this when I was preparing the presentation, and even as I'm speaking here today, I haven't really mentioned technology much, and I haven't really mentioned the digital classroom much, which is in fact the title of my presentation. But the technology, the digital classroom, is just merely that tool to amplify the learning. It's the tool that allows me to do something that I wouldn't be able to do without it. So if you look up here, these are some snapshots of classes within our school. It involves a variety of different techniques. They are just simply, the technology is a springboard for what we can do within our teaching and learning, and it really does allow us to achieve much more. So, and I'm going to finish on before I pass over to Gareth. The technology, we can now move away from that scripted, rigid, this was our only source of information, to an environment where it is much easier to develop that pathway for understanding, that discovery learning. And if I may say so, to have 4 students in junior cycle stand up here and to sit so calmly, I know they calmed me before I came up, I think that shows exactly what happens when we allow our students to explore their own learning, to play an active part in it, to get up and present and speak. Okay, I'm going to pass you on to Gareth now. Thank you.
Thanks, Lara. So, as Lara said, my name's Gareth Callan. I'm a music and maths teacher in Clare Galway College in Coláiste-Ballyaclar. And I suppose today we're not going to focus too much on technology, but more so what it enables us to do as teachers. And I suppose one interesting point that Alan made earlier on, and I suppose to touch on it, is that no one likes being told what to do. I, as a teacher, wouldn't like if my principal came in and said, I expect you to do this. But what we had at the start was a vision for something that we wanted to achieve over time, and something that we could experiment around with and see, was this possible? If so, how could we achieve it best? And one of the ways that we looked at this, and that I in particular use now, is the flipped classroom model. And just to introduce it, I suppose, this is where students go and they search for information themselves outside of class. So it's no longer the teacher comes and tells them, this is the information, I expect you to remember that. The student must go and they must use web searches, they must use any resources they can find to gather information about a topic. They then view tutorials as their homework, something like that. So I know Dara will talk about Office Mix later on, something that we use in maths quite a bit, and you know, they can view your tutorials on demand as many times as they want. They can replay their lessons over and over again if they need to see something again, to understand something better. And it's something we found students are really doing, something they're engaging with. But then what it allows us to do, you will see in the photos that Lara just showed. The classroom in our schools, or the classrooms in our schools, are very, very different to anything that I've experienced in the past. It's something that every day the walls get torn down and rebuilt again at the end of the class, because it just becomes something completely different. Students get to create their own resources in the class, they get to work on their own projects in their own groups, use the information that they've found outside of class, bring it in and demonstrate to the others what they've found. So for us, the flipped classroom allows us to create these 4 skills. It allows us to be the creator of content, the content or the knowledge. It allows us to be the collaborator, to get our students working together with each other, like they would in any team, in any job. To communicate with each other is hugely important, and one of the criticisms, I suppose, with technology is that, you know, it isolates people. In many cases, it doesn't. I can see over the past while, this presentation, I suppose, to sum up where we're going with this presentation, when we started this, it wasn't that I created a PowerPoint and shared it with anyone else. It was actually Niamh created this PowerPoint and shared it with us. So it's flipping the whole thing around. She's taking charge of this and saying, we're doing this presentation, we need to work on this. Everyone can work off the same page now. And that's fantastic to have in students who are 13, 14, 15 years old. And the critical thinker, I suppose, is the huge part of this. To be a critical thinker, to go back and to evaluate, what have I found? Is this important? Is it relevant? And if it's not, how can I amend it so that it becomes important to me? So traditional classroom, I suppose, we all know what it's like. Students come in, sit in rows, teacher writes up notes on the board, you take it down, or you underline an important line in a paragraph of text. They don't work together. For us, I suppose, in the flipped classroom then, students are actively searching for the information themselves. They're going off, finding a range of resources from different places and seeing how they're important. They're evaluating those sources themselves, and then when it comes to problem solving, they're doing it in class as opposed to at home. As a maths teacher, the biggest issue I have is that when some parents can come into parent-teacher meeting and say, well, I didn't understand that, I wasn't able to help them because, you know, it's ages since I've done maths and I don't remember how to do it. Now, what's happening is that parents are sitting down with their son or daughter in the evening and watching these videos. And when they come into the parent-teacher meetings, they're now saying, I recognize you from the voice on the video or from the things. So I do remember that. I do remember doing it a while ago. And I'm now able to get involved and to help my son or daughter. And when they're in the classroom, they're now doing this problem solving with the supervision of the teacher, where they can ask a question if they do need assistance. So that the support is there for them. And also the support for peer learning. For one student who shows that they've understood something, to demonstrate it to their peers. And that's hugely powerful. As a student, if you can demonstrate what you've learned to another student, it suddenly instills this belief that all students can get up to that level. As a maths teacher, and again going back to this, if I write algebra up on the board on day one, it's suddenly, oh sure, he must be a maths genius, he can understand this X and Y. But if suddenly it's the person beside you saying, no, it's this, and this is why it's important, then that creates a bond between the students, it gets creativity flowing in them, I suppose, and it gets them interested in what they're doing. One of the tools that we use a lot, and Dara will speak about this later on, is called Office Mix. So we use it in Microsoft PowerPoint for any presentations. So it can be used for us to track our learning, it can be used for us to to record presentations, to make them available for students to watch whenever they want to, in the run-up to tests, in the run-up to, a class. If they want to watch it a couple of times, they can do that. And I suppose for us, it allows for assessment of learning, for learning, and it actually allows for assessment as learning as well. So it gives us a wide range of options. The support's there for people who need it, and they show a good understanding, then come in and help their peers. And this is what it looks like. So it's just a video, as you'll see on the screen. It's just a normal PowerPoint, but then with your pen on your device, you can write over it. You can record your voice. You can show how you're getting from the top line to the bottom line. Because if I look at that in a book, I guarantee there's only two places I look, the top and the bottom. What's the question and what's the answer? I don't care how I got there. For these, you can add in different diagrams, you can annotate all your work, show exactly how you're doing it. So, for example, in different classes, you might use a slightly different approach based on what students understand better. So this allows you to do it on the fly, to change things as you need to in class. You can embed apps like GeoGebra. You can track all the things that your students are doing. So just what I love about this is, you'll see on the left-hand side there, you've got 95 visitors. But of those 95 people, they viewed it 182 times, which means that people are going back, the students are going back, and they're re-engaging with the work. They want to learn more. They're going back and saying, I didn't fully understand that, but maybe if I watch it again, I will. And that's something that I haven't seen before. And you can get really detailed information. You can compare the average against how students are doing and see why one is doing better than another or stuff like that. And you can drill down and get really detailed information on each student, find out exactly how long they're spending on something and how they're understanding it. So a place where this is going to be hugely important is the junior cycle. And I know it's a bit of a touchy subject at the minute still, but the key skills are there, and I think they're really important regardless of what we call them, whether we call them the junior cycle key skills or the 21st century skills. These are hugely important to all of our students. We're not just teaching a subject, we're trying to get students to be participating in society and to have that confidence in their own ability. And of the key skills, you can do a lot of this with what we've seen there. So involving students going off, getting their own resources, analysing them. They're managing themselves, their information, and they're working with others. They're collaborating with their peers. So you can do that in pair work, group work in class, somewhere that's supervised for you. And then students can manage their own information. They decide, am I going to do this on my device or am I going to do it by pen and paper? And there's times that it'll be both ways. Some students will do it on pen and paper, some will do it device, but they're making that choice themselves. What's best for what I want to achieve? So I suppose for me, how technology can help us. Caters for different learning styles, definitely, because we can use visual resources, audio resources. It allows us to adapt lessons for the class in front of us so we can change things as they're happening, and we can record important information and make it available to those students on demand. So particularly in the run-up to junior cert maths at the minute, a lot of students will be coming and saying, I did that in first year, but I'm not fully sure how to do it now. Is there any chance we can go back over it? Now it's a case of saying, yep, the Office Mix video is there, I've got that link, I can just watch that video in my own time, and then I can ask questions if I don't fully understand it. And as a teacher, I've just found that it helps me keep all my resources organised. If I want anything, I can get it from my laptop, which is up there on the stage. I don't have to carry around different Lever Arch files and hide things in filing cabinets and dig them out when I want to use it. I just go to my cloud and I search for it when I want it. So the bottom line is, does it change everything? No, it doesn't. Teachers are already doing a lot of good work, and there's still the same learning that's happening. It's just doing it in a slightly different way. And what we've found so far, and I know it's still early days for us yet, but we found that our students are much more engaged. They're much more confident in themselves. To have students of this age up here ready to give a presentation, and you'll see yourselves in a couple of minutes how well they are at presenting, how excellent they are at presenting. It's fantastic as a teacher to say, I see that on a regular basis. So the students we have here today, we have Neve is a third year student, we have Dara in third year also, we have Sarah in second year, and Vitska in second year as well. So I'd like to invite Neve up now, and she'll give her first presentation.
I'm in third year in Clash Ballyclare, and today I'm going to talk to you about the class collaboration notebooks in OneNote. This is basically a multifunctional notebook, which in simple terms is our copybook, our textbook, and all the group work we do throughout the year put together in the one place, so there's no such thing as losing any notes. So the cover page of our textbooks, they're the same as any other cover page of a normal textbook. You have your geography kind of cover, if you like to call it, and then what the student sees and what the teacher sees are slightly different. You have your welcome page, your group work page, and your teacher notes. They're both the same, but then a student can only view their own student portfolio with their own name on it, but the teacher can view every student in the class's portfolio. So the group work section group then is where the teachers and all the students have permission to edit the pages. This allows the children to work without the complication of sharing documents back and forth. In turn, this makes group work easier and more effective. So we don't have to be going arranging lifts back and forth to other houses and trying to find times that suit everyone. What we do in our own time is instantly shared with the other members of our group. And our initials are beside every piece of work that we do. So we get full credit for all the hard work that we put into each group work. So then the teacher notes section group, this is our textbook, and only teacher can edit it. And like Mr. Mongie mentioned earlier, it's a personalised textbook to way we as a class like to learn, and it includes our classwork and homework tasks. So then in the student portfolio, we have, this is our copybook, and only the student named and the teacher can view this. And this is great for if I've done an assignment and a teacher wants to give me back feedback, I don't have the worry of the students looking into my copy or whatever and seeing what the teacher wrote. That's my personal feedback. So it's great in that sense. And it's not all typing and pasting in pictures from Google. We have pens that come with our device too, and these two diagrams shown on the presentation I drew myself with the pen on the device. So these copies, they really are a great way of learning, as they're always with us and the teacher always has them too, even if we forget our Surface or our device, and there's no excuse like, oh, I left my copy at home, I don't have the homework with me. So I'm going to pass you over now to Dara to talk to you.
So my name's Dara Jordan, I'm a third year in Clash Ballyclare. So I'm here to talk to you about my favourite aspect of the digital classroom. My favourite aspect is Office Mix. This is where our teacher can share lessons and presentations with us anytime. These can include step-by-step instructions and quizzes to test comprehension of content afterwards. So audio and recording capabilities of Office Mix. So when our teacher is making a presentation for us about a certain topic, then they can put audio of them talking in the background. So when we're at home watching the video, it's almost as if our teacher is right there beside us explaining the content to us. They can also put in music also, depending on what we are learning. They can also write on the slides. So this gives the effect that the teacher is writing on the board right in front of us. This is very useful for revision. Good for checking comprehension of content. So once we watch the video, our teacher can add in questions for us to answer afterwards. This is very good, so our teacher knows where we are on a certain topic and whether they have to go back over the content for us or move along with the curriculum as they planned. This shows which of us need more help and which students comprehend the content straight away. So activities in Office Mix. In geography, we were learning about wind direction. Our teacher put the Office Mix video up on the board and we all watched it. Once we finished watching it, we were split into groups and we had to answer the questions in groups. This is very good because some of us understood the content straight away, where others struggled. But because we were split into groups, The people that understood the content straight away could help the students that struggled. This is very good for peer learning. Good for the classroom. So these are a few reasons why Office Mix is good for the classroom. So our teacher knows before we step into the classroom who has their homework done. This is very good because it leaves more time in class for questions that we have about the topic. Teacher knows how well students comprehend the content. So if the class struggled with the content, then the teacher can go back over it for us. But if a majority of the class or all the class comprehended the content fairly well, then the teacher can move on as planned and they don't have to go over the content again. Students have a basic knowledge of the topic going into class. So as an activity our teachers would give us, before we start a new topic in the next class, our homework could be to watch an Office Mix on a topic. So when we go into class, we have a basic knowledge of the topic. So then we have stuff like keywords and a basic knowledge basically of the topic. Class is prepared. So while we are watching the video on the board, then the teacher can be away preparing other classes and correcting homework, and if more people need help, then they can go and speak to the student individually. Good for revising topics. So if you've learned something in first year and you're going back in third year to study it for the junior cert, then you can go and watch an Office Mix at home during your study time of the topic you learned in first year. This is very useful because it's almost as if you're sitting in the class again. Your teacher is explaining the topic to you and they're almost as if writing on the board right in front of you. And also, if you were thinking ahead in first year, you could actually make an Office Mix for yourself for third year for your study. This can be very good for revision. I'm going to pass you on to Sarah now.
Hello, my name's Sarah McHale. I'm a second year student in Colossus Ballyclure, and today I'm going to talk to you about OneNote homework journals. So this year in Claregalway College, we decided to change our homework journals from physical notebooks to digital. The 2 points I want to get across in the presentation are how neat, quick and easy it is to use, and how it helps students to summarise their work, track their learning and reflect on their learning and see what they've done for homework. So what is the homework journal? It's basically just a normal homework journal, but it has some additional features that make it easier for students to see what they've been learning. It allows students to write down their homework, write down a few key points they learned in class or a topic they covered to see what they've been doing. They can tick off what their homework, when they've done their homework, and they can create a summary sheet of their homework and learning for the week, so that makes it easier to track and reflect on their learning. So what are the advantages between a digital homework journal and a physical homework journal? The digital homework journal is neatly organised, so you don't have to ruffle through pages to find previous homework or to find the page you're on or to see what's on your timetable for the next day. It's all stored together really easily. You've no danger of losing your journal. It's all stored on Office 365. And then tags keep information on subjects stored neatly. So beside all my maths homework and everything I've done in maths, I have a yellow circle, and that keeps everything stored together, and it's really useful in creating summary sheets. So then you have the summary sheets, and at the end of the week, they're really easy to create. They just sum up everything you've learned and all the homework you've had for the week. And teachers can check that a student is taking down homework and that they're learning. So what does it look like? It's divided into a tutor section and a personal section. So in your tutor section, you have basically everything that you'd see at the start of a homework journal: your code of behaviour, school uniform, junior cert key skills. And in your personal section, you have your timetable and a space to write down all of your homework. In this tutor section, you can view, but you can't edit it. And in your personal section, you can view and edit it. So the tutor section, as I said before, it contains everything you'd see at the start of the homework journal: code of conduct, school uniform, key skills, etc. Then in your personal section, you have your timetable, and you have all the weeks up along the top, and you can see you have a page for every day and a space to write down your homework. So this is what my homework journal looks like. I have my timetable and a space to write down all of my homework. And beside my maths, I have a yellow circle, so this keeps everything from my maths stored together. So those are the tags. And then I have a tick box that I can tick off my homework when I finish it. So those are the tags, and these are the tick boxes. So how do you use it? It's really easy to use. The student just writes in what they learned in class and writes their homework in when the teacher tells them to, and then you can tick it off as you complete it. And I create a summary sheet at the end of every week so I can see what I've learned. So what are the summary sheets? It contains a summary of some points or topics that you've learned in class, the homework that was given, and what was completed. They're really easy to make. With a few clicks of a button, you can see what you've been learning. And these is what they look like. So you have all of your learning categorized under each subject, and all of your homework and what you've completed. They're really useful so you can see what you've learned, and they're really useful in going to revise back over subjects for tests. So I found this way of writing down my homework really useful, and it made it easier and to track my learning and to reflect on it. And the three things I really wanted to get across are how it's stored neatly, easy and quick, and it's really good for tracking your learning. So now I'm going to hand you over to Vitska.
Hi, my name is Vitska Mulroy, and I'm going to talk to you more today about how we use devices in class. So we don't complete all tasks on the computer. Sometimes it just means a scene is set. For example, the tasks or instructions or success criteria are given. Those tasks often include working in groups or presenting, making posters, etc. And we are using the key skills, communication and collaboration. This is an example of a case study in tourism in Paris that was made in a group of 4 using a collaboration space. We followed the success criteria, which made it easier in one way because we knew what we had to follow to get the full marks. We were able to research many different areas and got a great insight to Paris. The research was made very easy because we had internet and easy research tools at our fingertips. Online resources. Having technology in our classroom enables us to use online resources such as quizzes and test yourselves. One we use in our school is Quizlet. Quizlet allows you to take quizzes, test yourself with question and answers, and listen to the pronunciation of words, which is especially useful when studying languages. Every student has a Quizlet account. In Quizlet you can make your own study sets. You can then share your study set by sending the link via email. Students request to join their teacher's class, and then once they've joined their teacher's class, they can partake in all the quizzes that the teacher has made. Teachers can also insert a link to a quiz he created into their OneNote book, which the students can then access. The teachers can also see how well the student has done in all these quizzes. In French class, for example, I find it useful when I go home and might forget the pronunciation of words. I simply log on to Quizlet and listen to the word being said. This way I know I'm learning the correct pronunciation. Is it helpful? I find it helpful when you can do the tasks over and over again until you've fully understood the content. It's very helpful, as I said, for when you're practicing your pronunciation. And it's also good support, so when you don't understand something, you can simply use the online resources, such as Quizlet, to double check something. I'm going to hand back over to Mr. Monkey now.
I just want to finish up by initially first thanking the first students. I'm extremely proud of them. They're exceptional ambassadors for our school. they interviewed to be ambassadors for the school. We had a whole bunch of students we could have brought today, but these came out best, and I'm sure that you can see from the presentations today that they're role models for 21st century learners. They're effective communicators, collaborators, team members, and they're exceptional students, gifted and excellent. And I suppose the key message from our presentation, the digital classroom isn't about devices. The digital classroom is about effective teaching and learning, and the devices just help us be more effective. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alan, and I certainly want to add my commendation to the 4 students. They are such a great tribute to your school. It's so young in its school life, and yet to be able to turn out students who are so proficient in presenting and so confident. Well done. Can I just open it to the floor? We were asked to finish up around about 12:30. We're 12:35. I'm sure there are a few questions. We'll take a few quick questions and then we wrap up. So has anybody anything that they'd like to ask of the teachers here, Alan, the principal, or the students? Yes, could you introduce yourself, please? Yeah. Okay, Lorraine, just a second.
My name is Lorraine Gallagher and I work for AHEAD, so with the Association for Higher Education, Access and Disability. And my question is to the principal, because you did mention that the technology helped, say, diverse learners, including the students with disabilities. And I'm just wondering, you get, like, say, extra technology like the likes of Clara Reid and Text Help. Do they actually work with those programs as well?
Yep. Part of the whole process, teaching and learning comes first, and we looked at that initially. And the selection of the devices and the software and the hardware comes last, because you choose the hardware and the software that you can effectively use in the classroom, and it comes in when you're looking at text to voice readers and all of those. So the particular technologies we use do support that. Not all technologies do, but that's why we chose the device and the technology last, because under each of the headings I spoke about initially, there's 20 or 30 questions we asked ourselves, and the point you made is one of those questions. And it's when we're answering those questions and then we look at the device and technology right at the very end, we try to make sure that we have the greatest amount of access to the technology so it is inclusive. We've worked with the National Council for the Blind of Ireland. Simon Lawler has presented in our school to the students, to the staff. He's their main IT guy. We run NCBI workshops for students in the province from our school. So it's something we're mindful of all of the time to ensure that students have full access to technology.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have we any other questions? Yes, we have down here.
Thanks. John Wall, Waterford, Wexford, ETBI. Alan, I think you said you had 7 months before you took up your role and you had a blank canvas. Put yourself in the position that you're a principal, that you have the vision, but you're in an established school with established practices and maybe a culture of, well, I've done it this way and it's worked. Yeah. What advice? And I know it's hard to know, but it's a challenge. Like you've had maybe a unique set of circumstances, it could be argued, compared to maybe a lot of people who might have the vision, but then it's operationalising the vision, for want of a better word.
Absolutely. I have 1 or 2 principals that visit my school every week, and that question comes up. And it is, when I said at the beginning, the implementation of technology into school is context specific, and you need to develop a strategic plan. For us, we can implement our strategic plan a lot quicker. If you're rushing into this to try and do this in 2 or 3 years, you're going to fail. You need to assess the organisational capacity. It's like any educational change reform. You need to plan it out. You need to be strategic about it. in some instances, it's going to take 7, 8, 9 years to get where you want to be. But you start small. And I suppose initially it's working with the teacher. The biggest mistake schools have made is rolling out devices to their students and not giving them to the staff first. I mean, you're on a losing streak. So you start with the change leaders in your school, the staff members who are enthusiastic, who want to change their teaching and learning practices in the classroom. So the teachers have to be, CPD is king, you know, and you need to get that right. Yes, we are in a new position, but if you're going to do it, start with the teachers, start small, start with small projects, and it'll gradually filter out to more, because the students become used to the practice with 1 or 2 teachers. And in a way it is peer pressure, and it starts to roll out a bit more from teacher to teacher to subject department to subject department.
Thank you very much. Have we any other? Yes.
It just kind of occurs to me, you know, like with all this technology, I mean, you have your phone, that's your computer. In terms of like the cost of the technology and things like maintenance and people losing computers and things like just how does that get managed within your sort of like very digital kind of school, I suppose?
Yeah. So you need, and it's going back to one of the earlier points in terms of well, I suppose the last thing almost you look at is the technology and how it's to be rolled out. But again, we had about 20 questions we needed to ask. How is it going to be managed? How is it going to be deployed? Who's going to look after the administration? You need to have answers to all of those questions before you implement it. So it does cost. You need to take the administration out of the hands of teachers within your school because they need to focus on teaching and learning. So you do need to look at the companies that are outside. We use one particular company. The company we use is Wriggle in terms of device management, deployment. We have structures in place where students pay for their devices. Yes, the devices cost, but our students don't have to pay for textbooks. I say this at every conference I go to, and I'll probably shout again. I know there's some people from textbook companies in the audience as well. The cost of textbooks, I think, is absolutely scandalous. The cost of ebooks, I think, is absolutely scandalous. I think there's a huge project and body of work there for, and I think the management bodies and the patron bodies, we're in a unique position in that in our ETB we have 20 schools, but around the country there's 16 ETBs. I think the ETB should take the lead in terms of the development of resources. Our teachers have done a huge amount of work in our school. They're working with other teachers around the country in terms of development of that content and those resources. I think it should be done in a very strategic way on a national level, and I suppose it's probably one of the things I'd call an ETBI that they should look at. If we are developing resources in our area, in Irish, in geography, why not let Galway Roscommon ETB take responsibility for the development of those 2 subjects? Another ETB work on 2 other subjects, and we develop a learning community where the teachers across the board can come together to share the resources that we have developed. That will reduce costs significantly, and then you're just down to the device in the classroom. And at the end of the day, the students are developing, yes, they're getting a device, and devices are expensive now, and they'll come down year on year, but they have a device that they can use right the way through their second level. If they look after it and mind it, they use this technology when they go to university also. There's very few university students that don't have a laptop. So the cost is worth much more in terms of the development of the skills. They're paying for more than just using it as a textbook. They're getting a device where they can develop their collaboration skills, their ability to develop presentations. It does cost. We try to manage that. In terms of inclusivity, we try to put structures in place for those students who can't afford it as well.
Insurance as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, insurance can be taken out on the devices, you know, the insurance cost. But I see very students with broken smartphones. Very, very few students with broken smartphones. I see very few students with broken devices, Surface devices. Students like these devices. If students like these devices, they will look after them. We have something like 400 odd devices in our school at the moment, and we rolled out 220 this year between students and staff, and we might have maybe 1 or 2 broken screens so far. If the student likes the device, they'll look after it,
Aye.
believe me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary there, and we just take this last question and then wrap up.
My name is Mehdi, Louthmead ETB. Very good work you're doing so far, and fair play to the students. My question is, what if a student refuses to engage, refuses to do any of the work online? Do they get excluded from that particular class, or how do you work around that?
I suppose it's the same with any student. There are students who refuse to engage when there's just textbooks sitting in front of them. So that's a classroom management issue. That comes down to the strategies and structures that are in place around classroom behaviour and classroom management in the school. And you just follow the processes as you would do with any other student, whether there's a digital device there or not. I've been teaching for a long time, and there's students in every single school who don't engage in teaching and learning. And you just need to work on it and motivate them and encourage them to engage with the technology. We don't have any students who aren't engaging presently and currently, but that comes down to the culture you've created in your school to try and promote full engagement. Okay. Can I just make one final comment? And that we do this in every instance. If you will only see this truly effective if you come and see it in practice. So we always have an open invitation to our school to come and see what we're doing. There's absolutely no problem coming and talking to more than just these 4 students in the classroom. Come and speak to the students and teachers in our school.
Thank you very much, Alan, for that very generous invitation. And I know it can be disruptive to visitors, but it really is the way of extending the message. I appreciate that very much. So we come to the end of the session. I have found it extremely informative, as I'm sure you have. I really want to commend Alan on his school, and then his 2 staff members, Laura and Gareth. And then in particular, we must just commend again the students, Niamh, Dara, Sarah and Vishka. And that brings our session to an end. I think we've